any excuse to wear vampire bangs. I was worried they were gonna make me have like a lisp or something, but I think I sound fine. So tonight I'm going to be doing another true crime video, obviously, and this one is it is a Halloween one. It's a Japanese true crime case, and it takes place on Halloween. It's probably going to be a little bit on the shorter side. If you're new to my channel and you like my videos, please leave me a like and a comment and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more. And my last Halloween type video was about the monster with 21 faces who terrorized multi-million-dollar Japanese food companies and threatened to poison the candy. So that one doesn't strictly take place on Halloween, but the whole poison candy thing is obviously, a staple of people's fears on Halloween. So yeah, that was my last video. You should check it out if you want to. After this one, of course. And so I'm gonna get started now. So this case doesn't really have a name in Japanese, but this is a recent one. It happened in 2021. So on Halloween 2021, Kyoto Hattori boarded a Keio line train at Keio Hachioji Station at around 5 p.m. bound for Shibuya, Tokyo. If you know, you know, am I right? He transferred to the Keio Inokashira line and arrived at Shibuya, which is known for the large crowds of costumed partygoers that come on Halloween and fill the streets all night. Hattori wasn't there to party or drink, though. Instead, he bought a Joker costume, a green shirt, and purple suit, and then he went and got 5 Zippo lighters and more than 10 cans of lighter fluid, which he put in one 2-liter bottle and then 4 more 500-milliliter bottles. After that, he walked around and watched the crowds for a little while, and then he got back on the Inokashira line train at around 6:40 p.m. and rode back the way he'd come, transferring to a Keio line train headed for western Tokyo's Chofu Station, a little bit more on the outskirts of Tokyo. Once he got to the station around 8 p.m., he got off the train and got right onto one headed back to downtown, this time a 10-car limited express Keio line train to Shinjuku. And I feel like probably most people know this already, but for anyone who doesn't, the limited express thing means that the train won't stop at all the stations on the line, but just a select few of them to make the ride faster. And that is relevant later, so. Hattori sat down in the 8th car from the front. The train left the station, and Hattori immediately took out a 30-centimeter, which is about 12 inches, hunting knife and pesticide from his backpack. A 72-year-old man sitting next to Hattori saw and asked, "What are you doing?" Which I couldn't find like a direct Japanese quote, but what are you doing in Japanese would be, "Nani o shiteru desu ka?" So, all of a sudden, Hattori sprayed the pesticide in the man's face, then stabbed him in the right side of his chest. Getting up, he started splashing the lighter fluid all around the car and set it on fire. Initially, some of the passengers thought it might be some kind of show, but then they realized that it was not, as more passengers started running. Hattori chased after them, waving the bloody knife around and setting more seats on fire. Quote, "I thought it was a Halloween stunt," one witness told the Yomiuri newspaper after the attack. "Then I saw a man walking toward me, slowly waving a long knife." Videos from on the train showed passengers running and stumbling through the doors between train cars as they tried to get away, and smoke started to come out of the car that Hattori was in. Some passengers set off the train's emergency alarm system as the train passed through Fuda Station, and the conductor planned to make an emergency stop at the next one, which is Kokuryo Station, which wasn't one of the stations that the train was scheduled to stop at. While the train was approaching the station, though, someone pulled the emergency door release handle, which basically just to keep anyone from falling on the tracks. Even though the door release handle had been pulled, the train doors did not open since the train wasn't aligned right. And so that caused everyone who was trying to get away to panic even more, because now they were trapped. And Hattori was making his way down the cars and lighting more of them on fire. So passengers really did the only thing that they could, and they started to climb out the train's windows. But not the whole windows, though, since I don't know if they don't open all the way or what, but from the pictures and videos that I saw, it was basically like a narrow slit at the top of the window. A man named Shunsuke Kimura, who recorded a video from inside the train, told NHK that the scene was, quote, horrifying, saying, "Train doors were closed and we had no idea what was happening, and we jumped from the windows." As a side note, staff at the station could have manually opened the safety doors on the platform if they had decided to, but they decided not to because they were worried that passengers would fall out of the train and onto the tracks if they did that. And basically, from what I saw in like the pictures and videos, like the train is basically like directly next to the platform wall. Like there isn't really, I don't know why my voice keeps cracking, there isn't really much space at all, so people were coming out the windows and climbing onto the platform wall thingies and then down onto the platform. So I guess in a way it kind of worked out, but to make the situation that much more chaotic, trains in Japan at the time didn't have any cameras in the cars, so none of the staff, including the conductor, could even know what was happening in the train until they saw it with their own eyes. It was only when the train had stopped that they realized there was a man with a knife attacking people and setting things on fire. So the conductor grabbed a shield that's kept in the driver's compartment, and he ended up helping the police officers storm onto the train once they got there. When they were inside, though, they found Hattori calmly sitting in a seat on the train with his legs crossed and smoking a cigarette, and he cooperated as he was arrested, which is shown in a video that you can find, taken by a bystander on the platform through the train's window. A female passenger told papers that Hattori had shown no emotion during the attack, saying, quote, "He held a knife and started spreading liquid. He was committing this act without showing any emotion, just mechanically. I think that brought fear to everyone." According to the police, 16 male and female passengers, ranging from ages 10 to 69, suffered mild injuries from inhaling the smoke and being attacked with the liquid, which I'm assuming was the pesticide, though I guess getting sprayed in the face with lighter fluid probably wouldn't be fun either. Another source that I saw said that 3 people had serious injuries, but by far the person with the worst injury was I said this in the video about that particular case too, but like, why would anyone think that salad oil is like flammable? Like, are we talking about like olive oil or something here? Like, that's not gasoline. That's not like a thing that you use to start a fire. I just don't know about that. But so that guy that he's talking about, Tsushima, he committed his crime because he hated attractive women and specifically wanted to kill happy-looking women. So, like I said, if you want to watch that, I have a video about it. It's actually a video about 2 different stabbings on trains in Tokyo. Well, in Japan. I don't know if they're both in Tokyo, but yeah. So the train cars were taken to a rail yard, and on November 1st, the police searched through them, finding that the floors and ceilings of multiple cars had been burned. At the scene, they'd found Hattori's backpack with the multiple bottles of lighter fluid and pesticide that I talked about in the beginning. They also had the knife that he'd used, which was an almost 12-inch long Western-style knife, so I'm assuming it was like a Bowie knife kind of deal. And he told the police that he bought that on Amazon. And ironically, with the rate of knife crime in Japan, Japan is actually known for their pretty strict laws about owning and carrying knives. Like, everyone knows that Japan's really tough with gun control, but they're also pretty tough on knives. And, you know, I say that it's ironic because from the cases that I've read, these laws never actually seem to stop anyone who want to stab people in public, since knives are probably one of the most common weapons used to commit crimes like this. And I'm just making that statement based off of like what I've seen in the different videos that I've done and cases that I've researched. But the laws about knives are basically that if you're not a chef or other tradesperson that requires a knife for work, you have to have a permit to own any fixed blade knife over 15 centimeters, which is about 6 inches in length. But I don't know how they even enforce that, because in this case, Hattori ordered his knife from Amazon, but in one of my other videos involving a stabbing spree, the culprit just went to a store and bought a large kitchen knife, then immediately went and, you know, did some crimes with it. So I really don't understand how those laws work. So under the Sword and Firearms Control Law, it's illegal to carry a knife with a blade longer than 6 centimeters, measured from the folding body and not just the cutting edge itself, without a valid specific reason, such as going camping or fishing. And, you know, you'd have to be carrying your other gear to verify that. Or you could be transporting it home from the store or taking it for maintenance, you know, that kind of thing. You would have to carry it completely concealed as well. So you couldn't, like, have it on your belt or, like, in a, like, little case, in the case of, like, a pocket knife. Under the Minor Crimes Law, it is illegal to carry anything that can be used to inflict bodily harm. And that might sound vague because it's meant to be, and it means that the police can basically arrest and charge pretty much anyone at any time for carrying so much as a pencil. That's what someone online said about it. In the case of knives, though, it means that they can give you trouble even for a tiny blade if they notice it. And I saw a story when I was looking into this about like a 74-year-old tourist who I think was American, who was carrying a pocket knife, and he got arrested and spent like something like 2 months in jail just because like he asked a cop for directions, and that Hattori wasn't particularly good at sports, and he didn't have the best grades either, concluding with, quote, he had little presence. Hattori was supposed to attend a reunion party at the Coming of Age Day celebration, but the man that they talked to said he does not remember if Hattori was there. I guess that other guy said that he was. The second man said that he was, quote, close to Hattori, and that, quote, I can't help but feel that it is a shame if he really was involved in the incident. A 50-year-old woman whose son attended the same kindergarten, elementary, and junior high said that Hattori was, quote, a kind and quiet child. She said she'd called out Kyo-chan when she saw him on the street when he was still in high school, and he greeted her back. And from what I know, calling someone something like Kyo-chan is a pretty babyish nickname, especially for like a male, since it's something you'd call a child when they're like 12 years old or younger even, and you need to stop calling them that because, you know, it might like embarrass them. It's just like kind of a babyish nickname. So the fact that he didn't make any kind of fuss about it and just politely said hi back, you know, has some kind of meaning there. In June 2021, Hattori had quit his job, or been fired from it, or was just getting transferred. The story was different in the different articles that I read. At a cell phone company back in his hometown of Fukuoka, he'd worked there for 3 years, and the reason he was fired or quit or was being transferred was because he'd caused some kind of issue, or a customer had complained about him. It depended on what article I read, but regardless of the cause, he became unemployed. As if that wasn't enough, he also found out right after that an ex-girlfriend who he'd lived with until just a year before the crime was getting married to someone else just 6 months after they'd broken up. He was also having unspecified issues with his friends as well. Because of all that, he started to feel depressed, and then he felt suicidal, but he tried that before unsuccessfully in the past, so this time he decided to put it in someone else's hands, basically, and that's why he wanted to get the death sentence. In Japan, usually the death sentence is reserved for people who've committed multiple murders, though in some cases, if you only murdered a single person, but it was just especially horrific, then you could get the death penalty. But so Hattori decided that he had to kill at least 2 people. Originally, he thought about just stabbing some people on the street in Shibuya on Halloween, but then the attack on the train I mentioned before happened in August, and he decided to copy that instead. Ironically, there was someone, I think it was a girl, like a young high school girl, who stabbed a couple people in Shibuya because she wanted to get the death penalty just on the street. Anyway, he apparently left Fukuoka in June and spent about 1 month in Kobe and another in Nagoya while staying in hotels. He made it to Tokyo in late September to early October, moving from hotel to hotel as well in Tokyo and racking up a lot of bills, I'm sure. 8 days after Hattori's attack, on November 8th, a 69-year-old man from Fukuoka tried to set a Sakura Shinkansen train on fire. The Shinkansens are like the really fast ones, the bullet trains. No one got hurt, though, and the train made an emergency stop at Shin Yatsushiro Station. After the man was arrested, he said that he was trying to replicate the attack done in Tokyo the week before. While awaiting trial, Hattori went through a 3-month-long psychiatric examination to figure out whether or not he could be held criminally responsible for the attack. I don't think they found anything, though, because he was indicted right after the exam in March 2022. A little over a year later, on June 26, 2023, the first hearing of Hattori's trial was held at the Tachikawa branch of Tokyo District Court, where he was charged with 13 counts of attempted murder for the man he'd stabbed in the chest and the 12 other passengers from the fire that he'd set. He pled not guilty to the counts from the fire, saying that he hadn't intended to kill people with it, which I was like kind of confused when I read that, because like he wanted to get the death penalty, so you'd think he would welcome any extra charges that made it more severe, seeing as he'd failed to even actually kill anyone. But he did confirm that he'd been carrying a knife, had stabbed a passenger, and had set the train on fire, so he wasn't trying to get out of the whole thing, just the 12 attempted murder charges. His defense team argued for a 12-year sentence, saying that the attack passengers were out of the car by the time he lit it on fire. The prosecutors argued that he should get 25 years in jail, saying that the crime was deliberate and that he'd prepared the things he used in the attack beforehand. They also said that when he spread around lighter fluid to set the fire, Hattori, quote, was aware that multiple people could die. In addition, the man he'd stabbed had been in critical condition, even going into cardiac arrest at one point, though he was revived. The injury ended up needing 3 months of treatment, but I assume he's still alive and well after that, since it was never indicated otherwise in any of the articles that I read. On July 31st, 2023, Hattori was found guilty of attempted murder for stabbing and seriously injuring a male passenger in his 70s and to spraying lighter fluid in the train car and then lighting it to try to kill others, and sentenced to 23 years in jail. In the ruling, Judge Yu Takeshita said the attack was an, quote, indiscriminate crime with a selfish motive that targeted many passengers who happened to be on the train. So like I said, obviously the Joker costume thing is what really makes this case stick out, and a lot of people have a lot to say about the Joker and what dressing up in that way meant about Hattori. Even Hattori himself said stuff like he wanted to become the Joker, but I found a statement by a criminal psychologist about it that I thought was interesting, so I'm just going to read that. Quote, I think he wanted to stand out. Professor Yasuyuki Deguchi, a criminal psychologist at Tokyo Mirai University, said about Hattori. He is a distorted attention seeker. By dressing up as the Joker on Halloween night, he thought he will stand out more. By acting like Joker and saying he looked up to him, he can get more attention from the people. I don't think he decided to copy the Joker just because he saw the movie, which is, it relates back to a lot of what people were saying, that, like, the movie made him into this person who wanted to go out and murder people. A number of criminal psychologists all said the same thing about the attack, that this was not the crime of a psychopath. Mass attacks are rarely carried out by people with identifiable mental disorders. Instead, they fit a different pattern. They're overwhelmingly carried out by men who feel rejected by society. Quote, social isolation or lack of social bonds is one of the biggest risk factors for criminal offending, like mass killing and other very serious crimes. Professor Takayuki Harada, a criminal psychologist at Tsukuba University, said. So they have no relatives, no loved ones, no job, and no social bonds. They are disappointed by society and very hostile towards society. They are also suicidal. Which pretty much sums up Hattori to a T from everything that I read, so. In response to this attack and the others that happened before it, and the ones that happened after it, the Public Transportation Ministry ordered train companies to open train doors right away at a platform in the event of emergency, even if the train didn't stop in the right place and the doors aren't aligned. Station attendants or train staff will then direct passengers to get out between the train doors and the platform doors if necessary. In addition, all companies need to install security cameras in all new trains. And so, the way that trains work in Japan is a little bit different than the way that they work in the US, kind of, just in that there are multiple companies that have their own trains and lines, even within just one city like Tokyo, with KL being one and others being JR, which stands for, like, Japan Railway, I think, Odayaku, etc., instead of just being like SEPTA or the NTA, where the city runs all the lines and is in charge of all the trains. So these are like private companies that are running all the train lines and public transportation in Japan, well, in Tokyo, but I think it's like that in a lot of the rest of Japan too. So if you're going somewhere, you might have to take two different companies' trains to get there. But the card that you pay with, which is usually like Suica or Pasmo, usually pays for all companies though, so it kind of doesn't matter like which line you take in the end, but I just think that's kind of interesting. And then of course the Shinkansen trains are their own separate thing as well. Like in the US we have Amtrak, which is like it seems like each region just has their own train service, or like each city has their own. Like San Francisco just has BART, right? It doesn't have like 72 other things. I could be wrong, but anyway, so in addition to all that, the police started doing drills at train stations to simulate armed attacks on trains and within the stations themselves to practice their own like responses. And JR, one of the major train companies that I mentioned earlier, has also had the idea for a scream alarm, which is like an alarm that would streamline responses in the case of any kind of attack or crime being committed on a train. And basically what it would do is that there would be microphones installed in multiple locations on a train to detect screams or the sounds of a fight or cries for help or any other abnormal kind of sounds. And if it heard sounds like that, it would send an alert to it'll send an alert to crew members to immediately, take action in their various like positions that they're in. The system will allow for a much faster response time than through the conventional method, which apparently passengers press an emergency button and then tell the train staff through an intercom what's happening in the carriage. Quote, "We need to give train passengers a sense of security through various methods," said Kazuaki Hasegawa, the president of JR West. "If the system works well, we would like to introduce it in our trains." So JR West and one of its group companies are now in the process of analyzing sounds through AI. But the company hasn't determined when the system will be introduced on trains, or whether it will really even be effective, because I don't know, when I was in Japan, I was in Tokyo, and the trains were pretty much very quiet. Like, there would be the sound of the train running and the sound of like it going over bumps and stuff, but most people, like, you don't talk on the train, you don't talk on the phone, you don't play videos out loud, you just stand there quietly and look at your phone, or if you're listening to music, it's in headphones, which, what a crazy concept, am I right? So there aren't like a lot of sounds, so I feel like there wouldn't be that many chances for like a false alarm, but also like, if someone tripped and they went like, or something, like, would the train just stop, It's just interesting to think about. I know in places like New York City, an alarm like that would probably get tripped like every other 20 minutes or something. But yeah, so that's the end of the video, or that's all I have for this case. It is a shorter one than I usually do, but there wasn't like a huge amount of different information on it. It's sort of cut and dry as far as cases go, like straight to the point. If you wanted to listen to another video after this, I really appreciate it if you went and checked out some of my other videos, especially some of the ones that don't have as many views. Like, I have one about the editor of Attack on Titan, a popular manga, if you haven't heard of it, who murdered his wife and then tried to cover it up. And, there is the Saitama dog lover murder case that I just came out with, like, maybe last